This is turning out to be a masterful year for real-time strategy games, as I don't just keep finding more totally new ones in development, but already released RTS games keep getting new updates and DLCs alongside fresh demos or playtests, and you all keep suggesting amazing mods for me to showcase. One of the most impressive new projects in development is certainly Nullspace, and now I have new footage of the space-themed RTS for you to be amazed by. Its developers confirmed to me that a public demo is coming soon, while this new trailer gave us a detailed view on its space travel, management and base building gameplay within a solar system. We also get to see the preparation and execution of real-time space combat missions between two fleets. The first-person view and direct controls extend from fighters to capital ships and bring a whole new dimension to gameplay which looks gorgeous, especially once ships deal damage to each other and capital ships start to break up into huge debris littering the area of conflict. Even the gas venting from broken ship sections finally gives a reason for there to be fire in space for as long as there is fuel to burn. The visuals do go a bit over the top, but I'm not here to nag about it because I'm reveling in it. Nullspace is going to have a story-driven campaign, 3 factions, formation controls, 3D environmental objects, and more amazing features. I literally can't wait for a demo to try it out myself.
Hey you.
What? Who are you?
I am you.
Who is me?
I am you, just a bit later in the video.
Alright, I'll bite. What do you want?
Do you want to be a full-time content creator on YouTube?
Yes?
Then shut up and let me do my thing now.
What do you mean?
And now for this video's sponsored segment, we are going to dive into the dynamic battles of World of Tanks.
Oh, I know this one. It's free to play on PC and I played it several times over the years and...
Shh! I'm working here, man.
Oh, okay, sorry. Please continue your ad segment.
Now, as I was saying, the most enjoyable features of this game for the majority of millions of players are hundreds of types of tanks, most based on history or prototypes, customization you can do on them, and massive battles on a variety of maps.
Oh yeah, I remember how I used to take the German Stug 3, put a net over my tank and park it in a bush and
snipe people from hiding, explode their tanks with a well-placed shot and watch the fireworks.
No, I would usually get spotted by a light scout and shot from behind.
You sucked, man!
Don't I know it?
Well folks, if you don't want to suck like the past me and you are playing for the first time, you can download the game using the first link in the description, and as a new player, use the promo code COMBAT to get free 7 days of premium access. This means you get 250,000 credits, the premium tank Cromwell B, and 3 rental tanks for 10 battles each. German Tiger 131, American T-78 and Chinese Type 64.
Okay, but if I want back in as a returning player, can I get a leg up?
Sure, returning players get 3 days of premium access, the 2D style bargain camo, sounds like something you would need, then 7 days rental premium tank Centurion Mark V.
But what if I already own that tank?
Then you get 100,000 credits as compensation.
Oh nice, I hope many of our viewers use this code then. Can I get back to the rest of my RTS news now?
Go right ahead.
Thanks. Now, in the world of AAA RTS games, few publishers feed their audience smaller teaspoons of content than Microsoft. So now Age of Empire 4 players can purchase the Knights of Cross and Rose DLC, which is live from 8th of April. The name comes from the fact that it introduces the Knights Templar and House of Lancaster, 2 factions which are based on French and English and playable in several game modes. Most importantly, both have good backgrounds in history, which will be explored through 4 specific missions of the new Historical Battles game mode, and include the option of replaying them in the Conqueror mode. Additional content are 10 new maps for skirmish and multiplayer game modes. Don't get me wrong, more content for Age of Empires 4 is always a good thing, but come on and bring back the massive and memorable expansion packs already. It's not like they don't have the funding or people to do so. And just imagine if the developers of Ablight had such funding and resources at their disposal. we would be playing this amazing indie RTS already in all of its medieval, dieselpunk and sewerpunk glory. I have actually made a whole video about it, with exclusive gameplay footage received from its developers, link to which is up here and in the description below. But for those who are hearing about this future indie gem for the first time, let me give you the basics. Ablight is designed from the ground up as a classic RTS, meaning resource collection, base building, unit recruitment and combat between three asymmetrical factions, each one featuring a unique playstyle with their own mechanics and strengths. It will not feature heroes or unit formations or any outlandish gameplay mechanics. Just good old melee and range land and air units, active and passive abilities, unique faction tech trees, as well as upgrades for the economy, units and buildings. Campaign missions, skirmish, multiplayer, sandbox and survival are all going to be part of its eventual full or early access release.
Deploying all squadrons.
This next project I found is going to seem like a very niche game not many of you might play, but at least it is a proven and working concept from a developer who already has such a game published to good reviews.
Commander, the fleet is awaiting your orders.
So now he's making a sequel called Battlegroup VR2. This is a virtual reality, real-time space strategy game, and I personally have never played anything like it or shown you such games before, meaning it is a first of many for me. Gameplay is based on an open world and a procedurally generated galaxy in which you can explore, mine asteroids, trade goods, become a pirate hunter, all the while growing your own fleet of ships. There are a few game modes like Combat Gauntlet and the Conquest mode, and each one requires you to be the fleet's admiral, commanding captains you appoint to ships you pick out from nimble corvettes to devastating battleships, each one equipped with weapons, shields and support systems. If I ever get a VR system, this is probably the first game I will play on it. If you have used one, please share your favorite games to play on such a system.
Unknown contact detected.
I know I am a bit late with talking about the early access of Arcane Wilds, but in the meantime the game got a bunch of updates, making this Western-themed fantasy RTS both better looking and working on higher frame rates. The devs also did a perk tree overhaul, meaning that now you have 30 new perks across various units to explore, and it is visually easier to navigate through them all. In addition to these changes and updates, developers implemented formations for groups of units and a new mission type called Annihilation. As its name describes, you have to destroy the enemy's main base to win. Mixing ranged gunpowder units with bows and arrows, melee and magical units was always going to be an odd mix, but the base building and resource harvesting are familiar and not hard to learn. The way you have a home island and take off in ships to invade others sets the game apart, and since Arcane Wilds has a co-op survival game mode, it might be fun to try it out with a friend by your side. And speaking of early access releases, the solo indie developer of Endeavor, Rite of Passage, has already published more than 20 patches for his recently released sci-fi base building RTS. These updates fixed and improved things across the board, and the dev incorporated suggestions and feedback he got from players and reviewers. Naturally, the AI bots behind his three factions needed revisions and upgrades, especially since they had to give players a challenge across 4 different game modes: campaign, skirmish, tower defense, and in the survival gameplay mode. The UI and controls were a focal point for a lot of player feedback and consequent updates as well, but the developer's main effort was on the implementation and improvement of the saving and loading system in the game. It is a basic feature from our point of view as players, but it turns out to be quite challenging for the developer of this game due to a number of factors. The controls hold more than a few welcome and advanced surprises I hope more developers embrace and add to their own games. What's important is that there is lots of content in Endeavor for you to play through, even if it needs a healthy injection of voiceovers, cinematics and characters to make it complete. Age of Mythology Retold is another landmark AAA RTS which was updated after its recent DLC, so I should talk about these changes and remind you that it is now available on PlayStation 5 too. If you had performance or stability problems with the game up to now, hopefully this update solves those for you, while a bunch of reported crash issues were addressed too. Folks who love their eye candy will be happy to know effects, textures and models were also fixed across the board, especially for the Chinese faction from the DLC. There are of course a bunch of audio, gameplay and UI fixes that came with this update too, but most importantly, you can now watch games at up to 16 times faster. On a personal side note, this has become my 6-year-old son's first RTS he ever played, and some of the footage I'm showing here is from his very first skirmish match. Since I started my PC RTS gaming career with Age of Empires, it was a proud moment for me. But you're probably interested in what is changed balance-wise. In that regard, the relic Tale of A was nerfed as it proved to be too powerful, particularly in the early game. Across the other pantheons, some gods and units were slightly changed in how much they cost or what their damage is, but it is the Chinese gods and units which received the largest number of balancing changes. Most notably, Major God Nuwa, which had several unintentional boosts that the developers realized were broken. Now, WARNO might not be considered a AAA RTS game, but to those who love its battle simulator combat style of war games and Cold War era infantry tanks, aircraft and helicopter units, it is probably one of their favorite games. So despite not finding the time to make a dedicated video about it myself, I need to mention its latest updates. There is now a totally new Homefront DLC which brings new units and weapons with 2 brand new divisions playable in skirmish, ranked or online multiplayer. There is a new map available that is part of the free reinforcement pack. In other words, you have both a free and a paid content update for the game. On top of that, developers have changed the whole armory UI. Now there is more content the developers are working on, which will come as part of the South Tag expansion. Once this expansion goes live, you'll be able to try out 2 new army general campaigns and 4 operations, while using one of the 10 new divisions. Some of these new ones are Canada, Spain and Czechoslovakia. Hopefully you will enjoy this expansion, considering the previous one received mixed reviews, mostly down to its content versus price ratio. Now I am happy to report that Project 37, the old school looking indie RTS, has a brand new demo for you to try out on its Steam store page. I have talked about this game in development before, but I wanted to make sure more people learned of it and tried it out so the developer gets much needed feedback, especially because he created a lane-based control scheme. What this means is that you send units down one of the lanes set on the battlefield and they fight on their own. The idea here is that you are left to plan future attacks and build up your army while units try to conquer sectors on their own. You can also call in airstrikes and paratroopers in Project 37, while the developer has implemented a tech tree with upgrades for such support powers. Anyone who is a fan of old school RTS aesthetics and gameplay will likely enjoy trying this demo out. I know I did, so I hope you will too, and please share your impressions and feedback to the developer. Indie game development is hard enough without knowing what the audience even thinks of your game.
Unit lost. Unit lost.
And speaking of old school aesthetics, I have a wonderful standalone mod to showcase to you, which is available on Steam, and the link to it is in the description, as are links to all the games and mods in this video. Some of you might have already recognized it, but for those who haven't, it is based on Warlords Battlecry 3 and it is subtitled The Protectors of Etheria. The main focus of this project was on making the game a sort of hybrid of RTS and RPG, as did the original game, but the mod's features add to this in multiple ways.
There are more unit types, new dialogue choices, terrain makes a bigger difference in battles, there are multiple endings and more. Other RTS and RPG elements like resources, unit stats and armor types were also improved by the dev, while totally new content includes soundtracks, maps, heroes, items and even a new campaign. You can try out the multiplayer as well with up to 16 players in 4K resolution. Do let me know, have you already tried it out or do you plan to down in the comments. Another game which deserves more attention from us as players is Five Nations. It is a sci-fi RTS set in space with stations and ship combat but on a 2D plane, so it feels more like playing a regular RTS just with a space theme. Its developers have published an expansion and now even more updates which include a Heroes mod. What this mod brings is a way of playing Five Nations so that hero units can be revived during the campaign instead of you losing the mission instantly when they die. In Skirmish, the human player can now build those heroes as units. And on the topic of Skirmish, these developers and modders have worked long and hard on trying to create a very good AI bot, which they have renamed from Fairplay AI to Delta AI, and given it difficulty settings like applying resource and production speed handicaps. Five Nations storytelling campaign is a long one with 56 missions and has voice actors doing their best to sell you on the characters and the world they're in. I find it really depressing that so much effort has gone unnoticed by the RTS community and that this game is almost never mentioned or referenced. I hope we all can help change that. As for another very unorthodox approach to RTS gameplay, here is an update on Mechabellum. It is not a game that I have personally been drawn into playing, but I have noticed a considerable number of RTS players among you mention and talk about it. So for those who aren't familiar with Mechabellum, it is a sort of tactical wargame auto-battler where you come into a battle with a custom pre-made army of mechs, choose their placement in your formation and start the match. From there you go round by round as your units fight, win or die, gain veterancy, and you give them upgrades to try and cover some weaknesses or boost their strength. Since this is a multiplayer focused title, the developers recently added a community rating system which is designed to help teach players manners in chat by giving them a limited amount of points, which are then removed for bad behavior and with them their chat privileges. The third season for this game started on April 3rd and will bring lots of updates to the gameplay, including new units, music, cosmetic stuff, and an undo feature which will let you use Ctrl+Z to undo your previous action in all game modes. Previous balancing changes have already shifted the gameplay, so if you haven't played before or in a while, you might want to start now. A similarly large update was introduced to Sins of a Solar Empire 2 alongside the launch of its first DLC, Paths to Power. I already discussed the DLC content in my previous RTS news video, linked up here and down in the description, so now I will focus more on the gameplay updates that came along with it. This free update is called Total Subjugation and it brings quite a few additions as well as changes. First, there is now a population mechanic which is heavily based on Synth's lore, and culture has great influence on the populations of planets and asteroids by increasing or reducing their productivity. As for new units, Tech Faction gained a missile corvette, while the Vasari received both a heavy fighter strikecraft and a frigate, while old units received some new abilities, like how the Kalev Gauss frigate now has coil shock, meaning it can fire a beam that deals shield damage and arcs to other targets. Another military-related change is the rebalance of missiles and anti-missile point defense, because of which missiles are harder to take down but are fired more regularly in smaller salvos. You will also start noticing new planet types like ice or volcanic moons and barren planets. There is of course a huge list of stats which were rebalanced across the game, like research costs and ship stats, but you can read the specifics in the huge patch notes.
Next, I want to share news of a very ambitious and good looking indie RTS in development with a fantasy team which we already had a few opportunities to playtest. This is Immortal Gates of Pyre, and the developers showed a preview of their third faction called Jorah the Iron Republic. No gameplay yet, but lots of pictures and art, even though the devs have a playable build with units and immortals of this faction. The gameplay for this faction will focus on a system where buildings restore units' energy for special abilities, called Juice. Joran structures will be boosted by other buildings connected in a power grid to make them even more efficient, while units will use lots of artillery weapons. This game does follow a more classical RTS approach to base building and combat, but it also brings a unique way of using powers and hero abilities. You can find creeps on its maps as well as different types of capture points for various boosts, while the AI can help you by taking over base building and even producing units, following one of the pre-built custom plans available for you to change during a match. Don't worry, the devs are working on making skirmish with bots available for future tests.
Most fantastic beings in Arcadia are the Modu.
Moduwar is another game that doesn't follow the standard RTS gameplay system, and I love it for it. You can now try it out yourself with its new demo, and I also want to tell you that these indie devs found themselves a publisher. This new demo lets you play through the first 2 levels, adding organs to your module like mouths, turrets and brains, while defeating 4 different types of enemies. You will also get a taste of the storyline and the actor who plays one of the characters on screen, similar to Command & Conquer's live characters. Having a game where your base is also your unit, which can separate into sections and autonomously move, fight and interact with the environment, only to once again join the main module, is something else. Hopefully, more of you will try it out and share your feedback with the developers, helping them fine-tune this very original game. If you want to see and learn more about it, I have a dedicated video which is linked up here and down in the description. If, however, you want to play something more familiar, but which still has some original aspects, you should know that Rogue Command has been released in early access a while back and has been updated multiple times by now. Its classic RTS gameplay is mixed with some modern roguelike elements, like the fact that you get to pick and choose a different set of units, buildings and their upgrades in new missions. This is done through a system of blueprint cards and can even be done mid-mission with orbital drops. It even has an active pause system where everything slows down to a crawl and you can still give orders to units. What is new in the recent updates, besides unit balancing and bug squashing, is a way to see persistent buffs you can gain from the start of a new level, so you don't have to scour the whole map each time in fear of missing out. There is a new upgrade for units called Echo and a new melee focus specialist. There is already a wide variety of maps to play on and units to customize, so I hope more of you will try a run or 2 in Rogue Command and let me know how you liked it. Battle Aces is the newest free-to-play and multiplayer-oriented fast-paced RTS with a streaming resource management system I have mentioned a few times, and it was playable for a while. Lots of players voiced their concerns over the free-to-play aspects, speed of gameplay and deck building, and now we will see how developers address those. I can tell you that the beta is starting on April 16th with new content and features you haven't had a chance to see or try out before. We are going to be able to use 4 new units, those being the Advanced Mortar, Shade, Blaster and Guardian Shield, each with unique abilities based on their function on the battlefield. This beta will also unlock all units for deck building for each player who finishes the Proving Grounds aka tutorial. With that, we can also check out how the progression system in Battle Aces is going to look with exclusive cosmetics and daily login rewards. Another game you can already test out is Space Tales, which has an active demo on its Steam store page. This is a retro futuristic kind of theme, similar to what is used for the background in Fallout. Here, however, you're a commander of the intergalactic planetary expansion, with the objective of pushing the boundaries of the human empire.
It has both base building and defensive structures, lots of units and some hilarious looking monsters and abilities. Developers promised a campaign with 16 main missions and optional side missions, as well as a research system and characters which can join your army and let you use their abilities. This one has been in development for a few years now, but it has shown good progress during that time. It almost feels like a wacky Looney Tunes invaded the Warhammer 40k universe, and the art, UI, sound and music design all work together beautifully to sell that aesthetic. For those of you who like space-themed RTS games with economy management and ship combat, I want to show you fresh footage of Dynasty Protocol, which I got straight from the developers themselves. One of their most recent additions to gameplay is the colony management system, which allows players to set different policies and resource tax levels for conquered colonies. These choices directly affect colony satisfaction, which in turn determines how quickly a colony might declare independence if left unguarded. We as players will have to keep the balance between efficiency and production through various policy options like liberal regime, authoritarian rule, environmental protection, and AI integration if we don't want to lose our colonies in Dynasty Protocol. Other features and systems devs told me about and sent footage are their new damage and repair system, as well as docking ships to stations to get those repairs. Then there is galactic trading, where we as players will be able to buy and sell resources through the galactic market. Resource values will fluctuate based on scarcity, with prices increasing as asteroids are depleted. I have talked about this game's other features like building modular space stations, developing colonies, mining operations and combat in my previous RTS news video, and I hope there will be more footage to show you in one of the next ones too. For the second mod showcase of this video, I want to talk about Stargate at War, the Pegasus Chronicles, a total conversion mod for Star Wars Empire at War Forces of Corruption. As the title suggests, it is about the conflict in the Pegasus galaxy, and you have the choice between three playable races, those being an alliance between Earth and the Asgard, Anubis, who is a system lord, and the Wraiths. The mod also features other factions and races from the Stargate lore, like Replicators, the Asurans, the Achans, the Ori, and more. You have both space and ground battles with all the troops and spaceships of these races, as well as unique quest chains, heroes, and other features that already existed in Empire of War's gameplay. It isn't hard to install, as it has its own launcher and auto-updater. Lately, the developers have added more maps, models, visual effects, improved the AI, and overall balancing. If you have played it before, let me know what you think of it in the comments, or if you haven't, do you plan to? Another new release I want to tell you about in this RTS news video is of Counter Clash, whose sole indie developer has managed not just to find a publisher, but set an early access release date for the 8th of April. This is a very much light-hearted strategy game, but it does have some base building and even heroes with special abilities they can use in battles. Just some of these are Spear Throwing, Mace Flurry, Piercing Shots and Tornadoes. Regular units can be upgraded, and there are lots of elemental and big units which can deal a lot of damage. Maps have good variety and even hazardous effects like lava. Counter Clash offers 3 different factions to play with and a single player campaign for each one. It is an enjoyable distraction from major games and one I think you will like. Another game I showed in a previous video, but of which I have fresh footage to show thanks to its developers, is Phantom Havoc. It is going to offer only single player, in which you rebuild your civilization with the use of a persistent fleet, inside of which you can even directly control your most massive ships. These new clips represent examples of different maps, space objects and enemies you can encounter, but do note there are even more types of maps I haven't shown here. Besides the elements like resource collection, survival, exploration and research with a full tech tree, there is also mission by mission story progression, as well as a tactical map which gives additional homeworld gameplay vibes, while ships have several types of weapons. Maps will have both hazards and superstructures you have to navigate around or through, but what I am most happy about is so many new developers jumping in to take advantage of the void left over from the failed Homeworld sequel. As this video showcase of newest RTS games is full of unconventional ones, here is one more, titled Realms of Madness. Instead of a huge open 3D map, here you get to experience tactical combat but on a more limited canvas, which does have some depth to it, literally and figuratively. But before heading to combat, there is an opportunity to build up your own medieval fortress in this fantasy setting full of trolls, dragons and other magical and mythical creatures. Of course, there are lots of humans here too, making up units of swordsmen, archers and even siege equipment. Besides unlocking abilities from a tree, interacting with characters through voice dialogue, you can set up all sorts of fire braziers, traps and towers to help fortify your base. Now, what is quite interesting is that I have found another similarly looking game titled Iron Frontier, but this one is set in modern times with conflicts that use infantry, tanks, aircraft and other vehicles of war. Another difference is that in this one we have a roguelike deck making system using which we can craft our own army and use different upgrades and power-ups on them. The units themselves have lots of different stats those upgrades change, creating a certain feel of progression and attachment to your customized army. Maps are more like backgrounds in such a game, and there are already a few of them, like a cityscape, desert, ruins, ice-covered hills and so on. This game does have a demo on Steam you can play, so we can all test it out and see if we like this kind of gameplay. Now a game that has been out for some time and received a lot of positive reviews, Thronefall. Today I want to mention its latest and, by the looks of it, last updates and show it off to people who might have never heard of it before. The developers feel like they have completed the game now and have added 12 new mini-game modes, each with unique rules, including a true endless mode where you can go up against an almost endless amount of enemy waves on just one map. What this game is about is building up a base during the day and defending it at night, while making sure to run a proper economy and having enough units to man your walls. Developers made other changes and gameplay improvements, including adding a key for speeding up time, and I must admit the color palette used in the game and for its maps is not something I have seen often, which made it stand out in my eyes. As if this video didn't have enough space-based games, here is one more. Astra Sentinel is a single-player focused indie game which should have an alpha gameplay playtest version available soon for us all to test play and give feedback to developers. This game is based on both planet and space-based gameplay, meaning you colonize planets, build on their surface and then go into orbit with no loading screen. There you are in a 2D environment, making defenses with turrets and shields and patrolling with combat spacecraft. These planets were taken over by an alien plague and you have to reconquer them one by one and turn them into production lines for your faction. There is going to be a skirmish mode as well, in which you can set up match rules as you like and randomly generate a new solar system in which to play. This isn't a lot of content which has been presented, so I hope the alpha test shows you why this is going to be fun to play. As for a more classical RTS game which has already been released years ago, I should mention that Rusted Warfare is quite cheap on Steam, and a few of my viewers recommended it since it has the retro graphics many like. It has single-player challenges, skirmish, sandbox, 10-player multiplayer and workshop modding support, so you can create your own battles and scenarios in the sandbox editor. This game is designed for very large battles with thousands of units, and its multi-core engine is optimized for this very reason. There are even experimental units you can build and use in the late game. This is why you have infinite zoom, so you can control all these units across the vast battlefield. It has a wealth of features for playing in multiplayer, including replays, saves and Steam friend matchmaking. If you have played it before, do share your impressions in the comments. Another game which has large-scale battles and lots of base building with multiplayer, but in space, is Zeta Leporis, whose developer created a nice new trailer to go along with all the new updates he has done for the game, like 2 new defensive units and adjusting the AI difficulty. What he added to the game is the energy reversal cannon, which can absorb and reflect enemy energy projectiles in a large radius up to a certain threshold. The second addition is the missile intercept unit, unlocked at tech level 4, and redirects any nearby enemy missiles towards itself, destroying them without taking damage. It is, however, vulnerable to all other projectiles. This was this indie developer's first game, and I hope he keeps on making more games in the future. Another game my viewers often mention in the comments of these videos is War Selection. It is a long-standing free RTS game on Steam and it gets regular balancing and even content updates. It has all the elements you might expect: resource collection, base building and unit combat, but also the age advancement system you're familiar with from Age of Empires or Age of Mythology. There are lots of different nations to play with, and recently Italy was added to the roster. Along with that, Japan received a new unit, and other units, buildings and animations were improved or added to make the game look better. Playing behavior has been improved as well, so they use up their fuel and ammunition properly when moving and attacking. Honestly, this one never drew me into playing it, but if you do play it regularly, feel free and try to convert me. The very last game for this showcase is titled Gelluloid Domination. It is a fast-paced tactical game that has a very unique style of play, considering it involves growing networks of cells to assimilate nearby cells, fight off pathogens, and develop nanoboosts in the lab, which are sort of abilities. It is very rare that we have biology-based strategy games, so I just had to showcase this one too, especially since it was released recently and it is playable on Steam. The cells can mutate and evolve, letting you expand so as not to get consumed by other organisms. They are also specialized for different uses like attack, defense, production, linking and other types of tasks. Beyond several modes in which you can play, there are also 80 handcrafted missions, each with a unique goal. I hope you enjoyed this massive showcase of many types of RTS games and related news, and don't worry, in a few weeks I will come back with just as much new RTS content. Until then, check out other similar news videos or exclusive game previews using the cards on the screen or links in the description, where you will also find a link for the free-to-play World of Tanks game and a code to get you started with extra tanks and funds. Thank you for watching and happy gaming!